my name
is Malachi.
That's right.
Where's Monsters?
Okay, I'll get that for you. I was actually able to. All right, I'll be there in a minute. Go sit on the couch, okay?
Okay.
Hey there friends, welcome to another video. So glad to have you join me again today. We are going to be talking about my birth story with my daughter Violet Naomi. She is my second born, and since her birthday is coming up, by the time you watch this, maybe it's already passed. I'm not sure what order I'll be posting these videos, but by the time you see it, she'll be a year or close to it. So for her birth month, I thought it would be fun to talk about her story and how she came into the world. So without further ado, let's jump right into the story. So I found out that I was pregnant early on in the year. I got pregnant in January of 2020. So obviously, you know, COVID was a big thing at that point. So that was definitely interesting, especially at first when we didn't really know what we were dealing with and there was a lot of fear and stuff. And yes, this is my birth story, but it's not a very long one, so I'm just giving you a little overview, a recap of my pregnancy and what that was like for any of you who are interested. So my pregnancy as a whole actually went very smoothly, and I'm very grateful for that. It wasn't, I mean, pregnancy is never easy. I say that about labor too. Labor is never easy, but just everything together with the pregnancy and the labor and delivery of Violet went very smoothly and was more or less pretty easy compared to maybe other pregnancies and labors. I did experience some morning sickness, which I did with my first as well. When I was pregnant with Malachi, though, it was more consistent. I knew kind of when to expect it to come, and then I was able to eat a little bit and get rid of it. It was more sporadic with Violet, and I never knew when I was going to feel sick, and the stuff that worked in the past to get rid of the nausea didn't always work this time, so that was a little bit frustrating, and it lasted a bit into my second trimester, not much. It really wasn't terrible. As I got closer, I was continually having like the Braxton Hicks contractions, tightening of my uterus. That kind of became the norm for the majority of my pregnancy. Let me think, what else? Oh, the back pain. I had a lot of back pain with Malachi, and it was almost non-existent with Violet. So thankful for that, because I was miserable when I was pregnant with Malachi. And I don't want to give too many details about that because I'm hoping to do another video talking about my birth story with Malachi as well, and I'm doing these terribly out of order. But oh well, this is Violet's birthday coming up, so this is why I'm talking about her first. And we'll just work our way back, I guess. So yeah, the pregnancy went pretty smoothly. Little back pain, it came up here and there, but wasn't really that much of a problem. I had a little bit of trouble sleeping at night sometimes, just because I would be uncomfortable, my brain would be running, and you know, I did experience that on and off, but overall, really none of my symptoms were crazy. I'm sorry to you moms out there who maybe have had more difficult pregnancies and you're coming to watch this for a little encouragement. I'm just like, oh, it was great. That's not very encouraging to you at all. I don't want to take for granted that it was such a smooth pregnancy. So then we reach our third trimester and my due date comes and goes. And now with Malachi, I had gone over my due date by a week or over a week, I forget. I don't remember exactly how many days over I was with him. Due dates, I mean, they're guesswork, really. You don't really know when your baby's gonna be ready to come. They're gonna come in most cases, and as long as everything's looking good, baby's healthy, you're healthy. I usually don't try to hurry along the process. Came to my due date, passed my due date, passed the next week, after my due date, and I was really thinking, man, she's taking her time to come. And because I had gone further with Malachi, I knew that was a possibility with his second pregnancy. But that being said, I still knew that that's common to go over with your first, and that didn't mean that it would happen with my second. So I was really hoping that she would come sooner. And if you go back and watch some of my other videos that I was filming, I actually began my channel when I was pregnant with Violet. And you'll kind of see where I'm getting into my, well into my third trimester, passing my due date. And I actually have a video where I talked about hitting the 40-week mark. And I definitely was just like, any day now, girl, you're ready to meet you. It was getting to the point of the pregnancy where even though it wasn't a very strenuous pregnancy, it's pregnancy and it's hard. You're carrying that extra weight around. There are so many other issues that I had some swelling on my ankles, and there's more fatigue every day, I just feel more tired, get drained so easily. And I was chasing around Malachi. He's not a crazy active toddler, but he was keeping me busy for sure. And just, I felt like I was constantly bending over to pick stuff up. Nearly lost my notebook. Just constantly bending over to pick stuff up throughout the day and clean and just doing basic tasks as a stay-at-home mom. And it just was very draining. So at the end of my pregnancy, I was definitely ready to meet my little one. And I had a midwife that came once it got into my third trimester. She was coming weekly to check on me and the baby. And she said I was having some actual contractions near the end there. When it was closer to my due date, she said, oh yeah, you're having some real contractions. And I wasn't really good at telling the difference. But the way that I was carrying and the way, just the position of everything, she noticed that when I was having a contraction, it wasn't necessarily doing the job that you want a contraction to do when you're getting ready to have a baby. The position was such that it was kind of like leaning, she was kind of like leaning forward a little bit. So when I got that tightening, that contraction, it wasn't like being as productive as it should. So we were talking about it, she's like, well, just whenever you feel that contraction coming on, try and like lift your belly a little bit so that it's sitting more upright. So I was doing that for several days, and there's still just nothing, not helping anything. And I wasn't catching every contraction either, because I was having a lot of them, and this was throughout the day, and I'm busy with my toddler, I'm busy getting work done. Like, I can't just stand around, lifting up my belly every time I had a contraction. So that being said, I was communicating with her over text, and she's like, well, I have this band we can wrap your belly, and that way you don't have to worry about lifting every time, and it's really going to ensure that those contractions are being productive like they should. So she sent one of her midwives over and taught me how to wrap up my belly. So for one whole day, I kept it wrapped up, and it definitely felt nice, just like holding everything in, gave me a little bit of support from my back. So I really appreciated having it wrapped anyway. Throughout the day and that night, it was still pretty much the same thing. I did have a couple little zings, I guess you could call it, where it's like, oh, that was a little bit more painful than before, but I don't even want to say painful, because it was just like really fast, like I said, a little zing, and then it was gone, and then it was just like the discomfort of that tightening. And any of you mamas who have been pregnant and have gotten into your third trimester, you know what I'm talking about. That tightening can be very uncomfortable, but in the moment you're like, it's not pain, but it's definitely discomfort. So, that night, nothing. I went to bed, and I don't remember exactly what time it was in the morning. I meant to check back into this, so I'm sorry I don't have the exact times, but I woke up to a contraction. I realized that it was strong enough that I was kind of having to focus on breathing a little bit. And that's kind of where the transition comes for me, when I'm having to focus on breathing. And there's a lot of things you can look for as far as like early labor versus actual labor, and it's different for everyone. And for me and my body, like, this is just that focus on breathing that I had to do to get through the contractions. Like, okay, this is different. And my husband woke up because he heard me kind of breathing beside him, and I was moving around a little bit because I was uncomfortable laying down. So I had this contraction, and he's fully awake. Like, he's been waiting for all his days at work. Like, anytime I would call him or text, he was just like on it. Just like, is the baby? Is something going on? Like, he was just, ready for it for several weeks now. And so, as soon as I started moving around in bed, he woke up and was like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? And I was like, well, this felt like a serious contraction. And again, I haven't talked about my other two pregnancies on this channel yet, so I don't want to give too much away for those, but he knew what had happened in the past, and he's like, well, once things start for you, things are going to take off. And then I had another contraction, very much like that first one. It was painful, and I had to focus on my breathing. I was like, okay, I'm going to get up, because obviously my body seemed to be starting to kick into labor. And yes, this was only like contraction number 2. I had maybe 3 contractions at the most, until my husband was like, okay, I'm going to call, I need to call the midwife. He wanted to call his mom, who's going to be present at the labor. I was like, well, just wait a minute, because I just want to make sure that I'm actually in labor. I've only had a few contractions. I guess you may not know this if you're watching this, but I am a doula, and so I do have some knowledge as far as what labor looks like and how long it can take, and all those details, which worked against me in this case, because in every labor, like in my pregnancies, I always am like, well, is it going by the book? And if it's not going by the book, then maybe it's not labor. And I knew that my body was different, and it's not going to be exactly textbook every time, but still I was like, okay, I don't want to jump into things yet. But my husband's like, no, I know that once you've started, you're going to go into labor. And so I was trying to talk him out of it, and he had his phone out, but I was trying to talk him out of calling anyone when I got this hard contraction, and I had to stop talking to get through it. And so he's like, okay, I'm gonna call my mom. And he called her, and then I was like, yep, go ahead, call the midwife. And she knew my past history with pregnancies as well, and as soon as she heard that I had had a couple strong contractions, she was like, okay, I'm coming over. This was on day 12 past my due date. So that was close to 2 weeks past my due date. So obviously, at this point it's like, well, something's got to get going at some point. Otherwise, man, she's just getting too late. And we're gonna have to encourage things along anyway. So I was glad that I was finally going into labor, as much as you have sort of this, I don't know, it's hard to describe that feeling when you're starting to go into labor and you're like, oh man, it's the excitement and the buildup. And for me, I've actually never experienced early labor, where I've had this amount of time to just kind of start going into labor. My body is like nothing, and then labor, just like that. And that's what happened. So I was having contraction after contraction. Some of them were like a minute apart, but they were mostly just one on top of the other. Once my body decided to go into labor, it really kicked into high gear. And my midwife showed up, and she got the pool ready. I, in the past, have had a home birth, and that was what I wanted to do again for this time. And I also had a water birth with Malachi. That's what I hoped to do for this labor as well. So my midwife showed up, started getting the pool ready to go. It was just continuing laboring. And I mean, there's not really much detail to get into in that aspect. It's painful, it's difficult, and you just power through. I'm so thankful to my husband, who knelt by me the whole time and hardly got up for a break. Just staying by my side, because he knew that's absolutely what I wanted the most, was just to have him there. And the midwife just kind of staying in the background, checking up and on things when needed. And he started getting closer, and she was kind of sensing that transition, which in my head I was sensing it too, but it seemed too soon. I was like, no, I still have hours left of labor. But she's like, if you feel like you need a push, then go ahead. And she's very easygoing about it. It's not one of those births where she's like, okay, now push, or okay, you're not ready to push, don't push. Like, she just was very much in tune to what my body was doing and what I felt like my body was doing, and just kind of following that, which I appreciate. So she's like, if you feel like you need a push, then go for it. And I was gonna say long story short, but actually it is a short story, because literally 2 hours and 45 minutes later, after that first contraction, Miss Violet Naomi was born into the world. My husband was able to help the whole time, and it was just crazy to me how fast this delivery was, because Malachi's was a lot longer, and I expected it maybe to be faster than my first, but not like 2 hours and 45 minutes from that first real contraction. And I really didn't have any early labor, or at least no early labor. There was early labor happening, but no early labor that I was fully aware of going on beforehand. My body just jumped into gear and got it done. So of course I have to give the statistics. Violet weighed 8 pounds and 7 ounces, and she was 20.5 inches long. So not a small baby for sure. And it surprised my husband and I, because she was completely coated in vernix. And the reason that was a surprise to us was just because she was 12 days late. And of course, again, due dates are not completely accurate, but I did think that because she was so late, she wouldn't really have much vernix at this point, but she was absolutely covered. It was pretty crazy. I'm so thankful to the Lord for granting me the ability to have these pregnancies where I've had it go so smoothly and been able to have them at home and without any medications, without any pain meds, because that is not the story for everybody, even those of you who really wanted it. And so I don't want to take that for granted. I don't take pride in that myself. I think, that's just how it ended up for me, and I'm very thankful for that. And later down the road with more kids, Lord willing, I don't know what the future holds. So I'm just very grateful to be able to have had this experience with Violet. She came into the world very quickly, and obviously our lives have not been the same since. She is just such a little fireball and precious, precious little girl. And especially watching my husband with a daughter has been absolutely a treasure to see. I just love watching him interact with her. There is just something so special between a father and daughter, and just watching it before my eyes has been very special, especially in light of my first pregnancy, which as far as we know would have been a girl. It just felt like there was a lot of healing that took place through that, because we had this expectation with my first pregnancy that was unfulfilled, that did not come to pass. And obviously having a son was our gift from the Lord, and our precious rainbow baby will always have this special place in our heart as the one who came after such a difficult loss. But then knowing that we probably would have had a daughter, and then being able to have the ability to experience having a daughter now, obviously does not replace the loss in any way. It never would. It's a whole different person. But just being able to have that experience and watch him be able to interact with a daughter has been so special. So yeah, like I said, it's not a complicated story. It's not a crazy story. If you were looking for a crazy story, I guess this was not the right video for you, but hopefully you found that out as you were watching and didn't stick through the whole thing and then came to the end and were like, well, okay, that was boring. But I hope for, Lord willing, more boring pregnancies in the future. And I hope that this was encouraging to you and in some way, and just kind of gives you an idea if you are pregnant yourself and just looking for some other stories out there, either just of births in general or home births, all natural births, whatever. If you enjoyed the video, then please give it a thumbs up, and I'll link a few of my other videos down below for you to see in the description. You can go ahead and browse my channel as well. It's crazy how much life can change from these moments, through these little ones that come into our lives that God has put in our lives. And I obviously don't know what the future holds for us, but I just love being able to be a mama to these two. And I'm so excited to see what God is going to do in their lives. Again, thank you if you sat through this whole thing. It was a pleasure to have you along, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video.